Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Hello and welcome back to The Catholic Mama. I'm your host, Christine Mooney-Flynn, and thanks for joining me on this episode. I was inspired to talk about this particular topic because a friend of mine, specifically it was more of a friend of my husband's from his high school days, is going to convert to Catholicism, which is just wonderful. He is of a Protestant background and has come to find the truth of the Catholic faith and is currently going through the RCIA process with the hope, God willing, of being confirmed as a Catholic in 2020. So all very exciting and good things there. But he mentioned something the other day that got me to think about curiosity. So, and I think it's a really important thing to a distinction because there are a lot of older Catholics that I have talked to over time who have said, when they were growing up, and I'll talk to a Catholic who's my age or around my age and say, oh, their parents grew up and they used to have questions about why things are the way they are in the Catholic faith. Why do we believe these things? And they were just told basically, well, because that's just the way things are. And what better way to drive someone away than tell them that, well, don't question, these are just the way things are. And even my dad, I was, it's funny, one of the most nerve-wracking things I ever did in my life was telling my father that I was converting to Catholicism. He has always been very forthcoming with his feelings about the faith, and they are not necessarily positive. And so to tell him that I had decided to become Catholic, I mean, I was sweating buckets. It was so funny, I'm in my 30s. I'm telling my dad that I'm embracing God. You'd think that I wouldn't be so nervous, but I certainly was. Anyway, but one of the things that he had said that I thought was interesting when I was telling him about my journey, he said, well, he had always thought that blind faith was no faith at all, right? So you shouldn't just blindly accept things without good reason. And I think that's where people get a little confused. It is okay to question as long as the purpose of questioning is to find an answer and not just to use it as a scapegoat or a way out of whatever you're believing. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So anyway, what came up the other day was the friend asked if he's questioning a lot of things. He's trying to figure some things out with the Catholic faith. A lot of it is different than things that he has come to believe over the years since his conversion to Christianity. And he was wondering what I thought about all the question asking that he is currently doing. And I said to him, I think it's great. But only so long as you are trying to get good answers. So there's a big difference, I think, between just plain old curiosity and also and then trying to find answers. Sorry, my brain just went away. I'm not sure where it went just now. Maybe into a field somewhere. It's back. I think it's back. All right, here I am. So yeah, there's a difference between curiosity, right? That old saying, curiosity killed the cat. And actually like wanting to find good answers. And I think it goes beyond, there's a few reasons for this, so we'll get into that. So curiosity is a good thing. So, so long as you're looking for the right answers or looking for answers in the right places. For you just to say, well, why is this? Why is this? Why is this? And you never actually look for the answer, but it just lodges seeds of doubt in your mind or in the minds of others. That is very unhealthy. If you're going to question things, you should do so with a mind of research and study. Studying is a great activity, right? Especially if you are not necessarily just, typing a question into Google and seeing what comes out. That's bad research. But if you have good resources that you can go to, if you have good friends that are well versed in the faith, if you ask the priest at your church or at a local parish If you could set up a meeting, call and set up a meeting. If you're not chummy or don't feel comfortable just waltzing up to somebody unannounced after Mass and asking them questions. There's plenty of things that you can do to really turn this just random study. Because it's so easy if you just start to ask questions like, well, why doesn't the Catholic Church allow for birth control? And then you start coming up with the answers. You're just plain old conjecture of why that might be, or you ask somebody who maybe doesn't know the right answer, but you trust them in other matters, so you ask them this and you respect their opinion. What if they're wrong? Then suddenly or if you never even look for the answer in the first place, but it's just a question that niggles at you and you never get a satisfying answer to it, well, man, what are you going to do with that? It usually just turns into a seed of doubt that blooms over time as more questions get added onto it, and suddenly you have a nice garden of uncertainty when it comes to the faith, and nowhere to, just weeds. They're just weeds, and you don't know what to do with them. So if you have a question of, say, man, why does the Catholic Church not allow for birth control? Why does the Catholic Church not allow for birth control? Instead of just letting that sit on your mind and you coming up with your ideas of why that might be true, or thinking, well, that's just silly that they should do that. There are so many reasons that birth control is good, and here's what I understand of it, blah, blah, blah. Or you go and ask your friend, or I was just thinking, that's so bizarre that the Catholic Church doesn't allow for birth control. What do you think about that? And then they give you some off-the-wall answer that is uninformed of what the Catholic Church actually teaches. Well, man, you're just festering bad information and bad ideas in yourself. But if you have the question, I wonder why the Catholic Church does not allow for birth control, and you head to, hopefully you have a copy of the Catholic Catechism in your home, or if you look it up on online, and it's actually the legitimate Catholic Catechism's website, and you look up contraception, and you see, wow, that's actually a good answer. The Catholic Church, wow, that's actually a good answer. The Catholic Church did come up with a good answer than that. But you still have some questions. Did it change? Is this practical in real life? What do you do instead of using birth control? What are you supposed to just, have unprotected sex, whatever it is? Then you can look further, read more sections of the Catholic Catechism, listen to a good podcast that explains about birth control and the Catholic faith. Go to a website like Catholic Answers. Watch any program there's so many good programs that you can either YouTube, or actually that's just my favorite thing, is YouTube. Oh, if you hear that funny noise, that is a baby waking up in my arms. You can go to EWTN or Franciscan University Presents or something like that, and they have a lot of good information there to help give a full and complete answer to your question that fills you up with the right information and is very satisfying. Church, if nothing else. I love that the word Catholic means universal, because I also feel like that means complete. And every question that you might have, the Catholic Church, trust me, has come up with a very, very good answer. A lot of it comes from dear old St. Thomas Aquinas, who was so thorough in the way that he would ask a question and research and give the answers, rebut objections to his arguments. Really, really full stuff, and a lot of good, maybe easier to, if you're nervous about reading into philosophy or the Summa, and you don't want to dive into that. There are so many good, faithful Catholics since Thomas Aquinas' time who have taken the time and effort to answer your questions in more modern language. It might just be easier to understand for you. So there are places that you can go to get really amazing answers. And also remember, the Catholic Church we have 2,000 plus years of tradition and study of Scripture, and these councils, the catechism that we draw on to find the answers to your questions. Any question you might have. And actually, we were at, a friend of ours was speaking at an event it was a couple months ago now, and it was on Stoicism. So there were a lot of people in the audience there who, when we got into the Q&A session part, you could tell like they might not have been Christian, and they probably weren't Catholic. They had a lot of questions about life and what the purpose was, and how to have a meaningful life and how to take care or think about taking care of yourself and your family and also the rest of the world. And they just had all these questions. And as everyone raised their hand and asked their question and got a somewhat good answer and sometimes not a very good answer, it became clear to me. I was like, you know what has a really good answer for that? Catholicism. Yep. Catholicism there too. And again, who has a great answer? Catholicism. It's just Catholicism answers the good questions and they answer them well. And it's just what struck me is I felt, compassion for these people around me. Not certainly that I have all the answers, but I know who does. And that is the Catholic Church herself. I felt so bad for these people because they had all these questions that it's like, oh, wow. I couldn't sit down right now and tell you exactly what the Catholic Church says in precise words or what paragraph to read in the catechism. But I was like, oh my God, I can tell you where to go for your answers to these questions that, you're asking, and you're seeking answers that you're just not going to find in only by studying Stoicism or only by studying Buddhism or only by studying, Buddhism or only by studying, I don't even know, New Age philosophy and spirituality. The Catholic Church just has these full, wonderful answers. Another problem with curiosity versus study. So let me make that distinction now. We've talked about curiosity is just asking, right, the question without the idea of getting a good answer. Study, though, is a great thing. That means that as we gave the example of looking around for a good answer about why the Catholic Church doesn't allow for birth control, if you study that and find good resources and talk to qualified people or listen to podcasts or audiobooks or whatever, read good books and articles there's so many, that can become a real study for you. Maybe you start with birth control, question about why the Catholic Church has teaches what is NFP, what is natural family planning. Well, here I'm going to dive more into this, and using good resources and good research techniques. Suddenly you're in study mode, and you were learning about our faith for a real good reason, and you're going to get real good answers from that. Another problem with curiosity, besides just depositing seeds of doubt, and without having it anchored by a real understanding and aim for study, right? Curiosity is good if you're coupling it with study. It is bad if you are just asking these questions with no with no real drive and certainly you're just too lazy, right, to go find good answers. That's a problem. But say your curiosity can actually take you away from time that you would have spent in either study or prayer. So sit down to pray the rosary, or you are sitting down to study something and you have very good intentions, but then a curious little question pops up in your mind, and suddenly 3 hours later, you realize that you have just been scrolling through Instagram, watching silly videos on YouTube, or reading some odd subreddit thread. That's a problem too. You want to be able to understand what is just a curiosity question versus what's an actual something that's going to drive you towards a good and proper study. So if you just gave in to every curious thought that you had at any given moment, and we've all done this, where you go to look up one thing, say on your phone, which is great that we have the internet, we have smartphones, we can look up anything at any time. And I remember years ago, right after the iPhone came out, was that 2007? So a year or so later, my brother got some kind of smartphone, and I still had a little flip phone. And I said, well, I don't understand. What am I going to use it for? And he says, you'll find out. It's true. You don't know until you start using a smartphone, all the things that you can do on it, which is great, but also not so great. It has the potential to really take you away from purposeful time spent in prayer or study or interacting with your family, making eye contact with people, all those good things. So if you come up, my recommendation for that, because I think we've all been in this place where we're thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to start praying the rosary, or oh, I want to look up this one particular question and get a good answer for it, and suddenly a headline pops up that strikes your fancy, or you're like, oh, you accidentally, I mean, it could just be out of habit. You go and open your phone to look up something, and you are suddenly clicking on Instagram, just because that's your habit of checking as soon as you open your phone, or checking email, or you try to go and study or pray, and you have your phone with you, which I would probably recommend not doing that just in general. But then you see a notification pops up, and suddenly you're down this rabbit hole. So if you come up with that and that happens, try to stop yourself as soon as you realize that you've done this. And if it's not too late and you haven't started fulfilling your curiosity, then just make a note. I mean, there's notes apps on every phone. Just jot it down real quick and come back to it later. I think that's another interesting way to figure out if what you are asking questions about is just curiosity, or if it's curiosity that you could anchor with study. Does that question keep coming up? Do similar questions keep coming up, and as you're jotting them down to remember to look them up? Do you see some kind of trend? Well, that might be a really great theme for you to start studying, and purposefully. I mean, when I say study and research, that is my jam. I went to school for anthropology, and mostly because I love research. I love looking things up. When I was growing up, my parents bought at the grocery store. They were selling one encyclopedia volume at a time, and over the course of half a year, my parents bought, or maybe there was like sets of 3, whatever it was. We had all the volumes of the encyclopedia in our living room bookcase. And it would drive my mom crazy because my dad and I would be talking at dinner, like, oh, we should look that up. And before cell phones, you had to actually go and look in a book. So we would leave the dinner table, go grab the book, bring it back, and read it. And it would drive my mom nuts because we were doing this in the middle of dinner when we should have, I guess, been not leaving the table. Phones, but you should not be bringing your phone to the table, so don't do that. But anyway, so research has always been this great passion of mine. And through my degree, and then through many years of doing market research for a large multimedia retailer, I have a good understanding of what is a good source and what's not a good source. I can parse through information very quickly, so it might take you longer to find good answers or find the theme that's running through all the things that you're looking for, but just keep trying and keep going to good resources. So what are some good resources? Well, this podcast is pretty good, I think. My husband also has the Pat Flynn Show as his podcast, but he does a Sunday school segment, which every Sunday he will talk philosophy or theology, and it's all from a very conservative Catholic lens. But if you want to break out from just hearing my voice or hearing my husband's voice, I won't just plug us. The Catholic Answers is great. I also love anything from EWTN. Scripture and Tradition is a great show with Father Mitch Pacwa. I love watching, now I'm blanking, the universe, Father Spitzer's Universe. There it is. Father Spitzer's Universe. He does great. And you can ask questions. You could always write a question in and maybe he'll answer it on his show. That is a great way. I mean, you're going to the source, these people who are very well versed in the faith and practice it and preach it. Go see what they're saying. And it really, Father Spitzer, speaking of, he has the big book, Father Spitzer's Universe. I'll put this in the show notes because I think it's just so good. The big book, right? Is that it? The big book? Anyway, I'll put it in there. But he has so much information that is readily available in just one website that doesn't make you... I mean, you might go down a rabbit hole on, say Father Spitzer's website, but that actually wouldn't be a bad place to go down a rabbit hole. A bad place would be like Reddit. That would probably be a bad place. You don't know what you're going to come up with, or YouTube or something. So pick good resources like the ones I've listed. Read good books. Anything like Scott Hahn's always great. I mean, you're not going to go wrong there. Look for good answers. Father Thomas Joseph White has, I think, the Life of Christ, the Light of Christ. I'm blanking now too. This is what happens when you have 4 kids and you try to do a podcast with a 6-week-old strapped to your chest. I'm doing the best I can, folks. But find good resources and trust them and learn, how to navigate those resources so that when you do have questions, you can easily go and be like, oh, I know exactly where I didn't read that section of the website, but I know it's there. So I'm going to go and look there, and I'm pretty sure my question will be answered there. So use your curiosity. Don't let your curiosity use you. We don't want that to happen. So, just pay attention to what you're asking. If it keeps coming up time and time again, then look for a good answer for it. If you think it's just a passing question that you really don't have that much interest in, let it go or jot it down so that you can look it up. You can look it up later when you have the time to really spend reading some good resources rather than just the first thing that Google spits out, which if you're going to do that on Google, make sure that you are actually looking at Catholic resources. You could ask a question about scripture or why things are the way they are, and you'll either find an anti-Catholic, a very severely anti-Catholic result is coming back to you, or just one that's it's just Protestant or just there's a wrong understanding of the scripture. So just make sure that you are adding, Catholic Church onto whatever search you're doing on, say, Google or Bing or whatever. And keep in mind, use your curiosity in order to answer questions that will help you know and love God better. That should be the drive. If your curiosity is helping you to love God better, ask those questions. That is good. That is a good thing to ask those questions, because then you'll get the answers and you'll be firmer in your faith and love God all the more. Even when other questions come up that contradict you, or if people have questions or attack you or the way you think, you'll know that you are firm in your faith. So curiosity can help with that. Just use it for good. Okay, I think that's all I have to say about this today. If you have any questions about good resources and you're not sure and you need some help sorting through, let me know. You can either go to thecatholicmama.com/contact or find me on Instagram at thecatholicmama. And I will say before I close out today that I will be doing a giveaway shortly in the next episode or two. So if you want to learn about how to enter in for that giveaway, make sure you subscribe.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.